Hi everyone, thank you for joining the webinar today. We're really excited for hearing from the charity panel today. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes to give people a chance to join the webinar, and then we will get underway. Hi everyone, thank you for joining the webinar today. I'm just going to give it one more minute just to give people a chance to join the webinar, and then we will get underway. I think we can get underway now. So firstly, I want to thank everyone for joining us today for the charity panel webinar. Really excited for today's webinar. We have a great selection of charities that have joined us today. They are award winners from last year. So we have Will Folks from the Chailey Heritage Fund, Tom and Kate from Spitalfields Credit Trust, and Gemma and Annie from Children on the Edge. So they will each be delivering a short presentation on their campaign from last year, and then we will open up the Q&A session to ask your questions to the charities. Just want to lay some house rules before we begin. So everyone is on mute. So if you do have any questions for any of the panelists, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom panel, and myself and my colleague Bethany will be picking them out and asking the charities during the Q&A portion of the webinar for you. If you would like to introduce yourselves or to any of the other attendees, or share your sort of experiences and your thoughts, please do use the chat function on the right-hand side of your Zoom panel. Yeah, it's always great when we have a bit of interaction going. And also the transcription service is available. So that's again at the bottom of your Zoom panel. So if anyone would like to turn it on, that should be available. And lastly, we are recording the webinar. So we will be putting it on our YouTube channel if you would like to watch it back or share it with any of your colleagues. With that in mind, I think I will hand over to Will for the first presentation. He's from the Chailey Heritage Fund, and they won the Outstanding Christmas Challenge Award, Outstanding Charity Christmas Challenge Award last year. So really looking forward to this presentation. I will hand it over to Will now.
All right, just trying to share my screen. Okay. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Yep, perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sahil, for inviting us to come along and speak. Chailey Heritage Foundation have taken part in the Big Give Christmas Challenge for quite a few years now, and last year was our biggest and most successful yet, and we were really grateful to receive the overall charity award at the end as well, and a nice little boost to our challenge total as a result as well. So just to give you some idea about who we are a charity which is based in East Sussex. We're one of the UK's leading centres for young people with complex neurodisabilities. So that means we have all our young people who are wheelchair users. Most of them are non-verbal. The challenges that these young people face are in communication and barriers to just having a choice in everyday things that they do. So we run a non-maintained special school for children aged 13 and young adults up to 19. We have a children's home where many of the young people who who attend the school live, either on a term basis or 52 weeks of the year. We have a home for young adults aged 19 to 25 to avoid there being a sort of cliff edge when the young people come to the end of their time at the school. And we also have a day service for disabled adults who live in the local community so that they can access services even if they're not living on site or part of the school anymore. So the challenge was all about raising funds for our therapy farm. We're very fortunate to be out in the beautiful Sussex countryside, and we about 5 years ago developed a farm where the young people can spend time with the animals. It's timetabled into their school life every week, but obviously that comes at a cost, and so it costs about £50,000 a year to run Patchwork Farm. And we targeted the Big Give Christmas Challenge to raise roughly 6 months worth of funding for the farm. It was slightly different for us from our previous Big Give Christmas Challenge campaigns, because rather than fundraising for specific bits of kit, which are quite easy to explain and to show the outcomes, we were fundraising for core costs for the service rather than physical equipment. So the challenge was to build the campaign around the running costs and how we would show clear benefits for the young people out of raising those funds, you know, the tangible impact that the farm has on our young people. So the challenge really became about storytelling and how to get the stories out there to encourage people to donate for this particular campaign. This is a fantastic picture of a young man called Finn, who has a very special relationship with our Shetland pony, Knick Knack. And that became one of the core stories that we started to tell around the campaign. So we drew on experience from our previous Big Give Christmas Challenge campaigns. Having done the campaigns for a number of years, we learned a little bit about how to engage with various audiences. A lot of detailed campaign planning went in beforehand, so we had a really good idea about what we were going to do pre-campaign, during the Big Give week, and then how to follow it up afterwards. We wanted to clearly define our target audiences, you know, existing supporters, people with a specific interest in the farm, those who had pledged, and how we could make the most of their networks as well. So we did quite a lot of work on defining those audiences and working out the best way to get in touch with those. And in terms of a storytelling, we really felt that video and images, when you've got such a photographic campaign, which includes the young people and some wonderful animals, you know, we wanted to make the most of the visual impact that we could get out of those, and the video, which would lead on our social media. The other thing that we've learned over the years with Big Give is, because we're looking at such a specific time period, we had to be very careful about when the marketing and PR happened around it to make sure that the donations came in at the right time and in the right way. Previously, we have had some issues when our PR has hit too early, and it's done the job in terms of eliciting donations, but because they came directly to us and outside of the Big Give campaign, they didn't count towards our match funding totals. So we were having to be quite careful about when those stories hit. So we had a campaign timeline, which was built of defining the stories, securing the pledges, obviously, which hopefully everyone's done by now, defining the target audience and putting together the videos, creating all the content, looking at the press release. We had a countdown on social media as well, using all the animals, which you'll see in a minute, making sure that everyone was prepped with our newsletter, that we had internal engagement, and that our email campaign was ready to go. So that meant that during the campaign, it was a case of putting out the pre-prepared materials and reacting to what was out there as well, and keeping people up to date with the progress of the campaign. We also wanted to make the most of our pledges network. So although you can't receive additional funds from a pledger during the campaign, that doesn't mean that they can't be really strong advocates for what you're doing, and use their networks to add during that area. And then, you know, we looked at actually some paid ads on some social media platforms as well, which worked quite well for us. And then obviously following up, you know, the stewardship of people post-campaign, making sure that we thanked everyone who'd been generous to donate, but also we got quite a lot of PR and press out of it as well. So our social media campaign, we wanted to have a 7-day countdown, which included images. So we had 7 eggs, 6 guinea pigs, 5 hens. You can see where we're going with this. We had the goats. So it was really engaging people with the farm animals and giving them an idea that the campaign was coming. We have our wonderful donkeys, and then always the star of the show is Nick Nack, and he was our 1 day to go. So that worked really well to build interest and to get engagement. Then during campaign week, we had campaign stories which were picked up in our local press. It was supported by our newsletters and the email campaign. We engaged as many people on site as possible. We have quite a large staff number here, so we tried to get them involved. We released fresh video content during the week, and obviously social media posting. And then we had people who had pledged, then tried to engage their workforce, so local businesses. So they had, you know, cake sales and various other activities to raise funds during that week as well. So as a result, we had a target of 25,000, and we were delighted to get to a total of 26, just over 26 in the end. Existing supporters and new supporters as well, and we were really pleased that we'd engage with new supporters as well as relying on our existing ones. And then post-campaign, we had press interviews, we had magazine feature with Candice Magazine, who were in fact our Big Give champions. We followed it up with thank you emails, posts and press releases, obviously the awards entry, and an internal wash up. And we learned some things. You know, the timing of the messaging is really important. You've got to get that right so that it hits during the week of the campaign. We learned that we thought that our email campaign pre-event could have done a bit more. So that was an area to work on for this year. Learning about the video clips and, you know, the formats and the timing that you needed for the social media, you know, and to use the pledges to get them to be advocates for you during the campaign. They've already bought into it, so to get them to then pass that on to the potential donors, and, you know, just to have as many stories as possible, short stories highlighting the life-changing outcomes and focusing on the young people. So I think that's a kind of whistle-stop tour of it. And, you know, we were, as I say, delighted to be able to use the logo supplied this year on the bottom of all our emails, and we're looking forward to the campaign again this year.
Thank you, Will. That was a really great presentation, really great insights on how to plan a successful campaign. And yeah, also, I love the examples of the social media sort of assets that you used, and all those different types of media. Really engaging, great campaign and wonderful presentation. So thanks again, Will.
My pleasure.
So next up, we have Gemma and Annie from Children on the Edge. So I will hand over to them. So they won the Support Engagement Award last year. So hand over to Gemma and Annie.
Thank you very much. Hoping you can see our screen. Okay, no.
Not yet. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Yes?
Yeah, we can see the screen.
Okay, awesome. So you can obviously see our faces there, and hopefully you can see us and hear us clearly. We are from Children on the Edge. My name is Annie. I'm a fundraising officer, and this is Gemma, who is in our marketing and comms team. And Children on the Edge is an international child rights agency working with some of the most marginalised children in the world, and in a number of countries, to restore hope, dignity and justice to communities living on the edge. We work hand in hand with local partners to co-create protective environments where children can flourish and thrive. So that's kind of who we are and what we do. 2021 was our third Big Give Christmas campaign, and same as Will, it was our most successful one yet, so that's always nice to hear. As an organisation, one of our focuses is on refugee education, and that was the focus of our campaign in 2021, which Gemma will tell you all about now.
We work in quite a few refugee situations around the world, and in one of the places we work is in Chukka 2 refugee settlement, which is in Uganda, and we have an early years education program for Congolese refugees, which we'd actually run a Big Give campaign on in 2019. So we were using an existing program that our supporters were already knew about, but we had a new aspect of the program that we launched for the 2021 campaign, which was our cluster learning program. So our cluster learning module was developed in lockdown. So when the classrooms and the buildings were closed, we had to find a way to still be able to teach the children and be able to keep in contact with them. So we started to gather small groups of children out in the communities. So in their homes, in churches, there were groups, as you can see, that were just under trees with trained teachers so that they could continue their learning despite lockdown. And during lockdown, it worked really well, but actually we realised that this model had such potential to be able to reach so many more children. And so we used the Big Give campaign to raise money to expand that programme and develop it further.
Yes, and as you can see on screen, our target was 36,000, which we surpassed with Lift Aid, and post-campaign donations, we actually tipped 40,000, which is amazing. And none of that would have been possible without our audience and our supporters, which is what our strategy was kind of all about. So the first thing we did when planning our campaign was to take a deep dive and really look in our audiences and segment out the different ways we communicate and who they are essentially. And the audience types we kind of segmented out into social media following, newsletter subscribers, previous donors from Big Give in past years, regular givers, high net worths, corporate partners, trustees, and our sort of local community here in Chichester. We didn't explain that's where we are. West Sussex, South Coast, not far from Will and those guys. So once we worked out who was who and how we wanted to approach them, we started looking at the strategy of our actual communication, which Gemma is going to go over now.
So when we were thinking about our strategy, we wanted to communicate our values through that. So we're a very relational organisation, and we're a small international charity, and everything we do is sort of based on the connections and the relationships that we have with our local partners around the world. So we decided that throughout the campaign, we wanted everything that we do, we did to create meaningful connections and put the communities that we work with at the heart of everything. We wanted to give our supporters the chance to connect with the people that we're supporting on a daily basis. We wanted them to really feel a part of the programme, so that they were hearing directly from the people that were there on the ground. They were familiar with them, and they actually had the chance to connect and communicate with those people too. So once we decided that, we looked at the sort of actual nuts and bolts of structuring our campaign. So for our emails and our social media, we made sure there was a really long lead time. So it really worked for us. We made sure that we introduced the programme well in advance of the Big Give, so that our supporters were really familiar with it. So they knew we were talking about when we talked about cluster learning, they knew what that programme was. They could see the impact, they understood it. We we introduced our team in Uganda. We mentioned throughout sort of that there would be opportunities for our supporters to be able to talk to them and to ask questions to our team and actually directly find out what was going on in that programme from those who were working on that programme. We also, to help build familiarity, we would have the team, they would send us pictures. So when they were out visiting the cluster groups, they would send us a picture, and we use that to just help build that familiarity. We got, whenever we were sent a picture, we would just put that straight up on socials and say, Philip sent us a picture, he's at the cluster groups, look at what they're doing, that kind of thing, just to make our supporters really connect with the programme and sort of just build familiarity. We also used video. Video was a big part of our campaign, so we created 3 videos to use throughout the campaign. There was one which was a 2-minute overview of the programme. It was a really visual video without any sort of interviews or anything, and it just explained what cluster learning did and the impact and the benefits. We then created another video, which was an interview with the team in Uganda and Rachel, our co-founder and CEO, that really went into detail. It was a bit more of a deep dive into the programme and how we were running it, how everything basically. And that was sort of a 3-minute video. And then we created a 3rd video, which was called What You Can Achieve in 60 Minutes, which is the length of cluster learning lesson. And that was a 60-second video, just really bold, sort of asking for support during the campaign. And we used these videos throughout. So they were shown at events, they were part of our email journey. We sent them to supporters to be able to use at their events. They were obviously on social media, depending on what audience was best suited to that video. And then events. So previously in 2020, obviously everything was virtual, but we found that really worked. So we wanted to carry on with that. And obviously having the team in Uganda meant virtual was the way forward. So we held a virtual event, which was our team in Uganda, some of our team here in Chichester, and also Rachel, who is our CEO, happened to be in Uganda the week that our virtual event happened. So she was live in Uganda. We also had some physical events with supporters. So we had a coffee morning here, but we also had supporters that held their own events, and we used the Big Give as an incentive for them to fundraise and donate
during the Big Give, which is kind of an outcome that we're sticking to this year, and encouraging people to, if they can and they plan on donating around Christmas time, to do that during the Big Give, because why wouldn't you? And these are kind of the key takeaways here. We had 225 people donate, which was a 42% increase from 2020, so quite good metrics. 62 of those donors were completely cold, never given to us before, and they were acquired through socials, word of mouth, events, things like that. And 60% of the new donors opted in to hear future communications, which is lovely to hear and see. And as Gemma said, as an organisation, and a key theme of the whole campaign was to continue our relational approach and personally communicate with our donors, also the team on the ground, and keeping those connections really seamless. And one thing we quite often do is thank donors by hand. So we write cards, we write letters, we really keep that personal touch there as much as we can. Obviously, we're a growing organisation, and we know it's not always practical, but it does go to show it's worth it, because there's a quote here from a donor that says, "I was surprised to receive a thank you card from Eloise. I thought it was a really thoughtful touch. It made me feel like Children on the Edge really value my donation, and I sign up to hear more news from the charity." So as much as it's time consuming, it's something we'll continue to do this year, and we want to continue building on relationships, using our community, and continuing those relationships overseas as well with our teams, reporting back producing really good content, and just marrying up all those things around Christmas time and the big give to hopefully raise lots more money. So I think that covers everything. Thank you for listening, and yeah, back to you, Sahil.
Thank you, Gemma and Annie. That was a really great presentation. I love the bit about audience mapping. We do really encourage charities to do that. So it's really great to hear how useful it was for your organisation, and also the post-campaign sort of stewarding of donors as well. Really lovely touch there. So thank you again for such a great presentation. I will now ask Kate to join us. So Kate is from Spitalfields Crypt Trust. They won the UK Charity Award last year, so really looking forward to this presentation. I will now hand over to Kate.
Hi everyone. I'm just bear with me and I will share my screen. Okay. Oh, okay.
We can see your screen.
Okay, great. So hi everyone, my name is Kate. I am the Director of Fundraising, Communications and Marketing at SCT, also known as Spitalfields Trust. And I should put a slight disclaimer in about our presentation. I've actually only been at the charity since July, so I am presenting about something that my colleague Tom is on this with me, and he was part of the team doing the actual work. So I'm presenting someone else's work. So all credit to them, and I'm using their glory while talking about what we did as a charity. So I will just start the presentation. So the Big Give campaign 2021 was the first time that we as a charity have done this, and it was done, just again to give praise to the team, it was done when the original person who'd made the application had left, and there are only 3 people in the fundraising team, or fundraising and communications team, who did it. So we'll talk about questions and learnings at the end, but I think the main thing is to try and have as many people as possible involved in the charity, and to make sure that maybe people don't leave. Anyway, so just to give you a background about us as an organisation. So we were founded in 1965, and we're a local organisation based in East London, in Shoreditch and around there, and we are a drug and alcohol treatment charity, and also we're a homeless organisation as well. So we are working with people who are at quite the edges of society, and often quite an unpopular cause, and not a cause that people necessarily give to in preference of other organisations. So the Big Give was great for us because it enabled us to kind of really reach out to people, and it also raise awareness about what we're doing, as well as raising some money. So as I say, this is just a couple of an infographic about what we do. So without going into too much detail, we cover the whole spectrum of drug and alcohol treatment, from Housing First, which is free abstinence treatment, to our 16-bed hostel, and then we have training and development, and we enable people to get into volunteering and employment. We have a move on house once they've been in our initial hostel for 6 months, and then we have a peer-led community once people have moved on into their own environment. So also on this infographic, as you can see, we're actually based with our shops and our services in quite a small geographical area. So unlike some of the previous charities that are presented, we're not an international development, we're a very local organisation. And in terms of fundraising, that can present some issues, because the pot that we can get money from is sometimes quite limited. Our advantages are that we're very near the City of London and that kind of thing, so we can fundraise some corporates and other organisations in that way. But in terms of individual giving and that kind of thing, often the geography goes against us slightly. So we made an application to the Big Give. It was our first ever Big Give, and we decided to not only use it as a fundraising campaign, but also as an awareness raising campaign, and also what we do as an organisation. So we focused on our training and development team and the work that they did, and within that we had 4 main aims, as you can see here, and they were to make sure that our service users, who, as I said, are some of the most marginalised people in society, were at the very centre of the campaign and what they did, and also talking about how they have moved into recovery, the great steps they've made in their lives, and also the work that we've done to enable them to do that. So that was the first thing. As I said, we also wanted to raise awareness about our work. We do have charity shops and that kind of thing. And as I'll go on to talk about, they were a key part of our campaign. So we are within the community, but we're not as well known as we think we should be. So also it was part of it about raising awareness, obviously about fundraising, and again, making fundraising from not only our local community, but other people, and also to raise money for training and development, and also finally outreach. So we are looking at having our shops as not only shops, but community spaces. So it was working with people to raise awareness that our shops are really part of their community, and yes, they're run by SCT, but they are, you know, belong to them as well. So what we did, as the other speakers have talked about, I think the key is planning what you're going to do. The big week, actual Big Give is 1 week. So a lot of what we did, or the team did, was work towards planning and getting ready for it. So obviously we did our match funding. We had a fantastic supporter who did our chunk of the match funding for us, and then the Big Give money. We looked into what was the best part of our work we could do that would raise awareness and would be eye-catching and that kind of thing. We identified the key groups that we could work with and would give to us. We planned a comprehensive communications strategy that included all channels and that kind of thing. And also what we did is, in order to raise awareness, our students who go to our art class, which is part of our training development, produced different paintings that we then produced as vinyls, and they were presented in our shops. So that was the planning. And then during the Big Give week, or the week before, we did a lot of media. We did a lot of social media. We did a lot of Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. We also had a fundraising event with some of our key major donors, and we asked them if they were going to give to us during that time, and also to raise awareness. We involved all our different constituents giving areas. So we had major donors, we had corporates, and we also invited some funders who are statutory funders, just so that they're aware of what we were doing. So the results. So as I said, we did centre on our service users. I hope everyone can see this. I know it's very small, but I tried to get everything onto one page. So with our centering on our service users, the people that access our services found it really confidence boosting, and were thoroughly enjoyed being involved with what we were doing as a charity and doing the fundraising. And they really felt like, to some extent, they were giving back. But also they learnt about the charity sector. They learnt what we did as a charity, apart from the bits that they were involved in. And they're also really excited to highlight an organisation that had really helped them rebuild their lives. In terms of raising awareness, as I think you can all read, our mailing list increased by 24%, and our social media following grew by 5%. And then I hope you can see the stats there, but we had on Twitter, we had 3,417 impressions, and it's our most popular campaign to date. Facebook, we reached 11,000 people. Instagram, we reached 4,000 different impressions, and TikToks, we had 6,000 views. So and we did lots of different things. We did videos, we did displays of the pictures and all of that kind of thing. In terms of fundraising, we set our target as 40,000. We exceeded that and raised 43,000, and we got an additional £2,000 from different platforms. 44% of our donors were new, which is fantastic, because they are now part of our individual giving programme, and that has helped us to grow on that. The average donation was £500, which was fantastic, and the outreach post-COVID, it was really fantastic to get people back into the shops and into environments and meeting with us. So we also had an exhibition, as I said, around the shops with all the different pictures, and that meant that we had 150% increase visits to our website. So what did we learn? Talking to the team, I think they were all excited and pleased, and as I'm sure we all go to conferences and we see things where they say, oh, how a small charity raised £1 million, became charity of the year, blah, blah, blah. But what the team did learn, and we've taken forward, is that we are a small team, we're a small organisation, but we can have aspirations, we can think big. We did also tailor things towards our different donor groups. So we contacted all our donor groups, but we did tailor things for each group so that it was met their expectations and also encouraged them to give to us. As I mentioned, the team became very depleted. So my biggest recommendation, which you can and can't do, is plan for the unexpected. And finally, as all the other presentations and we have said, it's about getting the message out. Really, the Big Give Week is as successful as you make it, as a number of people you contact. So it's hard work, but it's definitely worth it. Thanks very much, and I look forward to all your questions.
Thank you, Kate. Really great presentation there. Really encouraging how the campaign has also helped you sort of make more awareness of your work beyond just obviously getting the donations, which is great in its own right, but just getting the word out about what you do as a charity. So that's really interesting to hear about. If I could invite all the panelists to join us now, hope we can answer any questions the attendees have. And yeah, so I think we have a first question already. So anyone wants to join in here and jump in, first come, first serve, we're happy with that. But we have a question from Ruth from Child Bereavement UK. Did you reference that you were taking part in the Christmas challenge well in advance, or did you just introduce, or you just introduced the cluster groups what funds would be useful in the lead up? Like, she's basically concerned that if he talks about the Christmas challenge too far in advance, it may lose momentum. So just, does anyone have any thoughts on that? Or
yeah, I mean, if I can come in on that, I think timing is really important for the Christmas challenge. You can start talking about it too early. I think, as Gemma and Annie said, you can introduce the project and familiarize people with that, but that maybe has to be slightly separate to the campaign itself, because it's so specific. I think Kate mentioned that they got quite a lot of donations which didn't go through the Big Give route during that week. So it's really trying to make sure that everything builds up to that launch date and runs through that week. Otherwise, you're not going to get the match funding. It's got to go. The timing is really important. But that's not to say you can't introduce the project beforehand, but the actual campaign needs to be focused on that week.
Right.
I think just to add to what Will said, I think that's absolutely true. It is a time critical thing. That's why the event we had was to launch the campaign that we were doing. So all the social media and all the other things we did built up to that event and that day and that week and that launch event.
I think to add to all of this, we did launch. We sort of started talking about the project well in advance, so people were familiar with it. It was probably a month or so before that we started actually talking about the campaign and saying there is an opportunity to support this program coming up, and obviously gave people opportunities to register so that we could contact them and they could be the first to know. We also, the week of the Big Give, we changed all the sort of donate options on our website to be directing to the Big Give. Obviously with the caveat that if somebody wanted to support a different program or something, there were other ways that you could obviously donate, but we knew that was when traffic was going to be on our website, so we wanted to make sure that we could capture as many donations as we could.
That's a great point about making sure sort of your donation links are pointing to Christmas challenge if you want them, just to avoid like people donating on other channels. And actually, you meant both Kate and Gemma and Annie's presentation, you mentioned about events, and this is a question we get a lot. So but for both of you, Spitalfields and Children on the Edge, is how do you manage events in the sense that did you get people to buy tickets before and somehow handle those funds into your Christmas Challenge campaign, or do you just get people to come to an event and donate at the event? How was that sort of managed?
A mixture of ways, I guess, for us. Our own events that we held, organised, hosted, anything. The idea was people to take away with a pledge or with knowledge of the challenge and go away and make their own donation off their own back. But more supporter-led events, you gave them the tools to encourage fundraising on the night to then donate during the big give. Again, with video content and links, project information, all of that sort of stuff, to sort of pad out their event and increase that doubling your donation ethos and ideal.
Yeah, I think from our side too, we perhaps one of the learnings we had from our major donor event was just to be really super clear about the messaging on the match funding side of it. I think we definitely in 2022 want to be more clear that there's a limited pot that's matched. It's quite easy for that message to come across as any donation you make is doubled, which isn't true because there's a limit to it. So yeah, we in the events that we hosted, and the major donor event that we hosted, that was certainly front and center of what the event was about, was to get people to donate within that week. And I think just going back to the previous question as well, I was going to mention just having those dates everywhere and all communication, having those dates there was really, really important because the last thing we wanted was some lovely huge donation coming a day before when it wasn't going to be doubled. So yeah.
Great points there. Beth, do you have any questions being picked out?
Yeah, there's a question for Will from Josie, and they say, you mentioned your pre-campaign emails and comms, and in your learnings you state you could have done more. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I think we had some more general emails which went out, and we didn't necessarily target different audiences with slightly different messages. We've got obviously a range of different supporters, like most charities have, be they corporate or individuals or major donors. And I think we could have been a bit more nuanced. There's different messages for different groups. So I think for our general individual giving supporters, it's more focused about that double your donation. I think people are all looking for maximum impact. They're having to make some really difficult decisions about which charities to support. So certainly this year, we're going to be really focusing on that message about that they can double the impact of their donations during this week. It's a key message, and I think that will go to a certain segment. So I think it's just being aware that you might have to do a little bit more work beforehand to make sure that you are really targeting those individual audiences with the messages which are most relevant to them.
Great. And I think on to touch upon what you just said, this is a question from Hani. So this is to anyone that wants to jump in, is how can we make sure we're adding as much urgency to our campaign as possible during the campaign week? Any thoughts there?
During the week, we didn't necessarily take an urgent approach. I think being clear about dates ahead of time is obviously the key there. But during the week, we did focus on the positives and say, wow, this is amazing. Look how much we've already raised. We still had a chunk to go. So the opportunity is still there to double your donation, to make that extra impact go further. And we communicated that through email and social. So rather than saying, oh my God, help us, we kind of focused on, look at this is amazing. We've still got room to go.
You can still be a part of it.
You can still be part of it, exactly. And for pledges, we kind of reminded them on the first day of the campaign, this is happening. But we emphasised for new donors that no matter the size of the donation, you can make double the difference. It's not about, doesn't have to be about big bucks, every little helps, all of that age-old stuff. And I think that's particularly useful for this year. The economic climate, cost of living, all of that, I think people will have concerns. So what you might have given last year, you can give half of that this year and it will still, have an impact.
I think, to add to that, exactly as as Tom mentioned, and I think urgency is not quite the word I'd use. I think it's more about making sure that the dates of the big give are kind of front and center, and people understand that if they're giving that period, you will get more money, and that, as Will said, you know, you're doubling your kind of impact and support to the charity. So I think it's not so much urgency, you need the planning and the lead up time. I think it's more about making sure that people know in the time frame that they can give to you.
And just about urgency, I think another learning for us would be perhaps if we had some differing messaging ready before the campaign, depending on how the week was going, because actually we found ourselves hitting our target before the final day. And it would have been nice to have some messaging left to kind of talk about that we would still love your donations. Please give us your money, but they're not going to be matched. But there is benefits to donating through the Big Give anyway. So yeah, perhaps having some messaging that's dependent on how the campaign's going might be useful.
And I think there's also a message you can get out about, you need to use it or lose it. You know, if you have these pledges and then you don't get the donations during that week, you don't get to access that money. So it's someone who's there ready to put their hand in their pocket, but unless you get that those donations during the week, you lose the opportunity to get that match funding. So you don't want to give that as a negative message, but it's a positive. You know, it's a positive. You know, if you don't, you need to use it. You know, because then you will be doubled. But otherwise, it's a wasted opportunity.
I think I'd also add, just in terms of messaging, we do have a key messages document available in the resources section of your charity portal. Particularly this year, obviously, we're aware of the economic crisis that we're kind of going through at the moment. So the key message is give what you can and we'll double it, really drawing on that incentive of that doubling of donation and how the impact that can have, but also pulling in those secondary messages of, okay, if you can't give, here's another call to action, to like, to fundraise, to share, and just trying to motivate people to get involved no matter how small.
Cool, thanks. We had a question from Haley. How did you encourage existing donors to make what is essentially a bigger / additional gift through the campaign, if you did that at all, and how is it best to frame that ask? So I don't know if anyone actually specifically went out and asked donors to sort of increase their gift, or if it was just a natural reaction to the matching. Any thoughts there?
We tried to time our impact reporting on previous for established givers, people who've been giving us to us before. We tried to time our reporting back to them for their previous gift, mentioning the Big Give campaign coming up too. So we said, you know, you very kindly gave us £1,000 last year. If you were to increase your donation to perhaps £1,500, that would become, you know, 3 times what you previously gave. So yeah, and I guess just kind of making them feel part of this project. I mean, the theme of our project was community, so that was really important anyway. But yeah, bringing them in and making them feel part of it, and that now is the time, because your money can go further at this point.
I guess for us, we did a similar thing. It was that really trying to make people feel a part of it. So for our regular givers who obviously give monthly, we talked about the impact that our program in Uganda already had and how they'd helped us achieve so much already. And then obviously there are ways, if they want to help us expand this program, and that could be an additional gift, but also by telling a friend or by sharing our emails, sort of sharing on socials. So it wasn't just a direct, or please give us some more money. It was that there are loads of ways, you've already helped us, there are loads of ways that you can continue helping us. We also talked about sort of Christmas gifts, so like in lieu of sending out Christmas cards, do you want to make a donation, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with Gemma. It's not just for those financial activities which we were asking people to do. It's making the most of your networks, and that was previous donors and regular donors, but also staff, trustees, governors. You know, anyone who could leverage their network and get the message out wider. It's really important to make the most of that, because you can't do it all yourself. You need that to be it's not necessarily going to go viral in the traditional sense of the word, but you want to make sure that you're making the most of the activity that other people can do on your behalf.
Thanks, everyone. Beth, do you have a question?
Yeah, there's one from Isabel, and so she says, does anyone have advice for posting videos? Is it better to have 1 or 2 campaign videos featuring lots of supporters and beneficiaries, or perhaps shorter ones spread throughout the week, spotlighting 1 or 2 individuals at a time?
Yeah, we feel that a range of videos is really important, and a range of different lengths of videos, even if you're using the same base video, to make sure that it's appropriate for the different platforms that you're using it on. We, are all learning about, what works best on different socials and different platforms. So making sure you have a range of information, and yes, different stories as well. So you can keep the messaging fresh, because you're going to be not spamming people, but you're going to be pushing some messages out quite a lot during this 1 week. So to do it with all one video or 1 or 2 videos gets a bit repetitive. So having some variety hopefully keeps it fresh and interesting.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I mean, I think Will touched on this, but using the different social media platforms in what the demographic that uses those platforms are like, I think was really important. So we did kind of much more fun, shorter videos on TikTok, and it was actually our first experience of using TikTok, and it did pretty well, as you saw in the stats. Whereas perhaps longer videos on Facebook and Twitter, and yeah, just thinking about who your audience is on each social media platform.
Great, and I guess a question for all of you, looking back, is there anything you wish you'd known before you had your campaign? And addition to that, what would be your top tip for charities joining for the first time?
I think the key, and I think we've mentioned this a few times and don't want to sound like a stuck record, it's about timing. It's about making sure the messages hit at the right time to drive traffic in that 1 week. Because if it comes too early, you will get donations which aren't doubled. And if it comes too late, it won't work either. So trying to work out, it's relatively straightforward when you're managing that media yourself. But if you've got PR messages going out and you're asking other people to work on it for you, making sure that time scale is right, that those dates are loud and clear, are right across everything that you do, and just trying to make sure that you're driving traffic in that 1 week. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree with that, all of that. And I think also knowing your audiences and having different messages and knowing when the right thing is going to hit for each audience. That was really important with us. And I think we found, so there were a couple of churches that did support, but actually we realised that we needed to contact them a lot earlier than we actually initially thought, because they'd already done their sort of yearly gift. And so we were too late for some organisations. So that's one of the things we looked at this year, and we've actually sort of already started touching base with those churches and those groups earlier, so that they've had enough time to know about the campaign and that it's happening.
Yeah, utilise your audience definitely externally, but as Will said as well, internally, members of staff, trustees, volunteer networks, make sure everyone is talking about it, not only during the week, but ahead of time.
Great. And yeah, I think as well, if you're asking people to share, make it as easy as possible for them to share. So give them the assets or the templates or the tweets and all of that to make it as easy as possible for them to do that for you. We have a question from Safak. She would like to ask if any of the panelists reached out to any corporates for the campaign, and if yes, how did they manage that approach? So I don't know if anyone specifically went out to any corporates for that approach.
Sorry, I missed the first part of that, but we definitely did, yeah. Yeah. So how did you manage that approach for that corporate sort of support? we centered our corporate approach around the major donor event. So the donor event, well, we're calling it a major donor event. It wasn't just major donors; it was corporates too, and really put it in their hands that this is your opportunity to. I mean, we know there's a lot of tick boxes that happens in CSR departments in corporates, and this is their chance to double the impact of their donation. So. It works, there's a massive benefit for them too, as well as for us. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to leverage with the corporates is their staff and their numbers as well. We primarily went to corporate supporters for pledges rather than to make sure the pledge pot was filled in the first place. But once you've secured that, you've got a internal resource that they have, and so you saw on my presentation that they were having sort of events in their workplaces to raise money during the week. So it's in order to make the most of the pledge that they've made in the first place, they were then following it up by encouraging their staff and their colleagues to donate during the week. So it was a sort of double hit from a corporate, really.
Yeah, that's really great advice there, and I guess that's the thing, is you have to be clear what you're asking that corporate support to do. Do you want the donation from themselves, or do you want them to share with the network? Or really identify that. And if I've heard of a story of one charity where they were just posting on LinkedIn at their campaign, not necessarily targeting anyone, and actually a corporate supporter did end up giving them a donation which they weren't expecting. They never interacted with that corporate before. So maybe as well, just trying low hanging fruit like that, like building out your LinkedIn sort of network and posting on LinkedIn as well. You never know who's going to share on there. But yeah, if you're using LinkedIn, it's definitely worth starting now and building that base because of the way their algorithms work. I've got a question from Christine. How far in advance do you let your audience know that you're taking part in the Christmas challenge, specifically by newsletters and social media?
Well, we have a monthly newsletter that goes out, and we are going to be talking about it in our newsletter at the beginning of November. Obviously the one that goes out at the beginning of December is going to be mentioning it as well, but we're prepping it in the November newsletter, and then it'll go in the December one as well. So yeah, I think about a month in advance, giving people a heads up, and then during the campaign itself, we'll be using that as one of the many tools during the week.
Yeah, I guess we're sort of similar timing. So we right now are just prepping things like our landing page. So we are going to start putting it in sort of blog posts. So just a sort of footer at the end of a blog post, so that people who are really engaged and really going through these things can have an idea. And obviously there's everything on our landing page, encourages people to sign up now and to hear more when the actual campaign launches. And then it's probably within the month where we sort of properly start putting it as like PS in some of our emails, and we'll put it on, sort of start mentioning it on social media and things.
Great. Well, sorry, anyone else? No, that was it. Sorry. Thank you. I think that's all the questions. So I firstly want to thank Kate, Gemma, Annie, Will, and Tom for joining us today and sharing their insights. It's been really great for them to spend their generous time with us, and yeah, just give us all something to think about for this campaign and sharing what they know. So thank you again. I want to thank all the attendees for joining us today, for giving us great questions and being really interactive today. Just a reminder, we do have the PR webinar next Wednesday at 12. You can sign up for that by the webinars resource in the Christmas Challenge dashboard. That is being hosted by our PR company, J&H Communications. So if you want to find out more about PR, please do join that webinar. But in the meantime, I wish everyone a really great weekend. Thank you all. Bye.